Okay, I think we are live. Oh my God, this is working. Thank you everyone for bearing with me for 4 minutes as I figured this out. Brave new world that we are in. Yeah, okay, here we go. Um, so for everyone who is just joining us, I hear some chimes and things still. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. Um, this is the Sonic Q&A, right?
Oh,
Oh, Eric. um, I have a couple of business items to go through first, and then we'll jump straight into a conversation with Marnie. Um, so people to thank first. I do want to thank Memory, the whole team there. Not only did they produce this film, but they also set up the virtual screening and the platform and worked super closely with us at the DocYard to do everything in the way that we feel is most responsible, not only for you as the audience members, but also for filmmakers. And I'll talk about this a little bit more in a second, but I do think that the way that a lot of online virtual screening has been happening in the last month is actually not very good for the industry and for independent filmmaking. I also need to thank the Brattle Theater. They are our longtime partners of the DocYard, have been the venue for the DocYard for the last 10 years, and they are closed like all other theaters in the US. Thank you, Marnie, for joining us here. We all see her on screen. Thank you to the DocYard team, to Jen Carmel, to Hannah Garfield, and to Lyda Kuth. The DocYard is a program of the Left Foundation. We couldn't do this without the Left Foundation. We also couldn't do this without you. Thank you all for being here. Business. So yeah, if something weird happens, anything inappropriate, Jen Carmel is the co-host for this conversation, and she has my unilateral approval to just ban people, but I'm sure that won't happen. If you want to view everyone's faces who wants to show their face on video, and you haven't used Zoom in the past, just go to the top right-hand corner of your screen, and you'll see kind of an icon with 9 dots. That's the gallery view. If you click on that, you'll be able to see 25 people at a time. You can flip through the pages. We will be using the Q&A, the chat box in Zoom for the Q&A, but feel free to chat, ask questions whenever. You don't have to wait until the designated time to do so, because we'll be taking questions as they come. And finally, this question is being recorded and it is being streamed right now on YouTube. And we are also streaming this chat box. So just keep that in mind, that whatever you are writing is being recorded. So if you don't want to show your face or don't want to write, it is obviously completely up to you. If you need anything, use the chat box. Jen Carmel, again, by the way, she's the Left Program Officer and the DocYard Series Coordinator. She'll respond to you and with any technical questions about Zoom. And before I get started, just one last thing. Just like last time, I do want to say that I do feel very fortunate myself to be able to do this Q&A with you all. Not everyone is able, because of personal reasons or family health emergencies, to take time out of their night to watch a film like Crestone and to participate in the Q&A. And indeed, we are doing this Q&A virtually. Marnie was supposed to come to the DocYard, come to the Brattle in person at the end of May, but the Brattle is closed, and they did not, in fact, receive the small business grant, the payroll protection program grant. So if you have anything to spare, if you have the means to do so and want to help keep legendary theaters like the Brattle alive, please do go donate money to them. I'm sure they would appreciate it. So yeah, without further ado, I'm going to, any questions so far in chat? Any of this confusing? Okay. Yeah, so we really want this to be a free-flowing conversation. That's what Marnie and I talked about when we did a tech check for this Q&A yesterday. So yeah, don't be shy. Okay, so I'm going to start off a little bit by kind of, to me, situating this film and what I see as. So, first of all, this film seems very of the moment. And this is something that we talked a little bit about yesterday, Marnie. Not only with the California wildfires from last year, but also, COVID-19 and self-isolating, with a lot of people from cities having escaped perhaps to more rural places, like I myself have. By the way, I'm not in Boston. For those of you who didn't know, I'm in mid-Missouri, and this is my parents' this is my childhood home. And so, in many ways, this film is very timely, subject-wise. It's also, I think, really of the moment, because there are a lot of things that it does that I think are, and this is not in a derogatory way to this film, but it contains many things that I think are kind of trendy right now. The two that come straight to my mind being collaboration with the subjects and a hybrid way of working, and the second one being about social media, or being about Instagram, and trying to make a film about social media platforms and the internet natives, for instance. But to me, this film is one of the few films that really understands the potential of those terms. So for instance, like, to me, I think it's very clear that the hybrid is not, for instance, observational plus reenactment. It's kind of all woven together. And that the Instagram portions, they flow in and out really freely. It's not like, we're just watching someone post something to Instagram, and we're not directly hearing from the subjects why they're attracted to using this medium. It's just a part of their lives. So to sort of get into that conversation, so that was really long. Don't want to get bogged down like that again, so apologies. But I'm really curious about the prep that you did for this shoot. I read, thanks to Eric Allen Hatch, who's in chat, that it was an 8-day shoot, which to me seems like a really short amount of time for the diversity of material that you have. So I'm curious, at what point, did you decide that it was going to be quote-unquote hybrid, if that's a term that you even use yourself, and what sort of preparation went into knowing what to shoot and what the approach was going to be?
Sure. First of all, thank you so much for having me, Abby, and setting this all up, and thank you to the Brattle Theater and everyone spending their evening with us tonight. It's really fun to be here, and I'm very honored. CRESTONE was a speedy film from pre-production into shooting. I have been friends with a couple of these guys since 2006, and we've been in touch just through social media and text messages and phone ever since then. We grew up in North Carolina together. And I guess in 2017, I found out that they were living in this town called Crestone, Colorado, and I became really interested. I always loved looking at their Instagram content, their stories, their lives. I think they're great entertainers, and I think I like watching their friendship evolve on social media. And when I did hear that they were out there, one of my friends invited me to come just visit, and we've been talking about collaborating for a long time. So I decided to go out there with my friend and cameraman, Corey Hughes. We only had a budget that could cover 8 days, 10 days of travel. And so we just went out there and wanted to see what would happen. I knew we would at least come away with 2 music videos. That was something we talked about in depth with the guys. We did maybe 2 or 3 months of planning and just writing back and forth together. Again, I didn't know if this was going to be a short film, a couple music videos, a feature film. But when we got out there, it was really apparent that there was a lot of room for creativity, and that it would be easy to shoot as much as we could in a little amount of time, because there wasn't much to do out there, and everyone there was energized to do it. So it was really fun, and it just was a collaboration from the very start, when we were just even talking about music videos and talking about different scenes we can do. They would send me like pictures of different locations. I even got a really amazing PDF from one of them with a location, like a URL to like pictures of the location, and then the distance in miles. And the distance in minutes from their house. So it was like they were doing a lot of the legwork for me. So that made it really easy. And to speak to the hybrid, I'm not really sure how else to make movies. I think a majority of my work is hybrid. I attempted one narrative and it kind of just ended up hybrid. I just love a film crew, and I love the relationship that happens and what happens behind the camera. And I don't think I would be honest if I was telling a story without involving a lot of that.
Yeah. Wait, so what sort of things were you talking about in the 2 months leading up? Because it sounds like the shoot was the first time you had physically been on the ground at CRESTONE.
Yeah. I just remembered the one video that made me really decide that I wanted to go and do this, and I think the one that I showed Corey and Memory was they were doing a hot sauce taste test video on YouTube, and it was so good, and it was in the weirdest kitchen. I was like, we gotta go shoot this movie with these guys. It'll be so fun. They'll be the greatest actors. Wait, what was your question?
Yeah, so what sort of things were you talking about? Like, was it actual ideas for scenes? Were you mapping it out, like, to that point of detail, or?
I told them I wanted them to do a lot of shooting on their own cameras as well, and to be posting while we were shooting. I wanted them to have control over who they were in the movie, whether they would choose a different internet persona, whether they were who they felt they were in their physical life. So we talked a lot about that. We talked a lot about just like different ideas for sketches that they had. They spend time making their own YouTube sketches, so they're just giving me ideas for that. We talked a little bit about, we never really went into depth of what it means for us to be making a movie in this way. I don't think we all really understood what we were really doing until we were actually doing it. Seeing them shooting, like, for instance, the scene of the waterfall, seeing them shooting that location with their cell phones while we were shooting them, it became apparent to me that, we're making like multiple movies all at once here, and that's okay. And that's what we should let it live in, is in all of these different cameras, all of these different characters making their own movies into one.
Yeah. Well, okay, so this does lead me into the next question, which is, because I noticed, for instance, Corey also gets a credit in the film as a writer and not just as DP, right? And so I'm curious in terms of what actually happened during the shoot in terms of the quote-unquote narrative arc and of individual scenes. Because we do have, it's you playing the quote-unquote straight man or woman with the voiceover, and you kind of, the only real tension, like kind of the argument, the falling out over the TV remote, which I find so funny, happens in a way that feels very planned based off of the voiceover. But I'm curious whether that was something that came out of your experience on the shoot, whether that was part of this construction beforehand. What did Corey contribute? Like, how did you two work together while shooting?
Yeah, Corey, it was just me and Corey. There was no one else there. I was directing and running sound, and Corey was doing camera. And so when you are that alone together, it's impossible for our stories to not become one. And we would see, for instance, Cody, the character on the bike with the goggles. The day we pulled up to Sloppy's house in Crestone, Cody was outside of his house showing Sloppy his bike just like you saw. Mm-hmm. And Corey said, we should shoot this. Like, we should make this a scene. And so he definitely has authorship over that scene and that character. I believe a lot of the drone character and the more poetic voiceover is a lot of his writing. And for yeah, the narrative arc, that really, we had 8 days. We shot the most we could. We had these little ideas and stories pop up. Someone would be like, oh, I found this cool thing, or I had this weird prop, or I could say this. So that was happening constantly. But I think that Avatar remote throwing scene, that was, it was tough on Sloppy because everyone was staying at his house, and he was playing the role of an actor. He was playing the role of a father. He was a partner. He was a friend. He was a host. And I think that day in particular, it was really weighing on him. And I could tell that he was maybe at a breaking point. And he had been, he had known he was going to have to act the next day. So he had spent time preparing. And I think that scene came from a real place. And I think that did come from a place of conflict within himself, with what was going on around him, with his relationships with his friend, and how difficult things actually were during the course of the shoot. Not that it was the end of the world, and not that he was actually starving or thirsty. It was like just the culmination of everything. That really felt like a natural art to me, even going into editing, because that is where the collapse was for that character. And I think for everyone around to realize how difficult it was in that moment.
Yeah. And apparently a lot of people, at least Mandy, also loved him as a character, as we see in chat. That leads me, so I do have a question about, so we'll get to Jake's question, because I think it's a good bridge, but maybe a little bit too insider ball game for right now, for the filmmakers that are part of this Q&A. But I am curious about the other, the portrayal of the subjects, because one of the things that I'm sure, I'm curious, have people talked to you about this film in terms of like cult documentaries? Yeah, okay, I'm sure. So I didn't want to make a comparison if it wasn't apt. But I think about, like Netflix series like Wild Wild Country, or even Tiger King. We're not going to talk about Tiger King. Don't worry.
Please,
yeah.
Okay.
Or, all of the Jonestown documentaries. And I think about how it's a super sexualized and misogynistic place. Actually, like all of these kind of attempts to go away from society actually in fact reproduces a lot of those same dynamics. And what I love so much about this film is that, to me, it was like the most pure hangout movie with a group of like 8 guys that I'd ever seen. There's a surprise, like given the other shenanigans that they get up to, actually there's surprisingly little that's sexualized about it. So I'm really curious about what was the thinking behind the portrayal of this community, and then also about, perhaps if you could talk a little bit about the lack of women there.
Yeah, so those are two really intertwined. I get the question of, are there actually women in Crestone? Of course there's women in Crestone. There were women on set with us. It was a very sure decision of mine to strip these characters of what defines them traditionally in media, which is illegal drugs, guns, and women, and particularly bad relationships with women. And I think stripping those things away from these people they became how I see them. I grew up with a lot of them. I spent a lot of my teenage years with them, and I know them as people very different from who they portray themselves online and in their music. So removing these elements that they have added on and that society has added on to them, I think creates a purity that I find in them, and that's really honest, and I think that is really relatable to a lot of people. And I didn't remove women as a statement. It was just to bring them back to like this boyhood and this focus on like brotherly friendship over everything.
Yeah. I mean, it makes a lot of sense when you think about this portrayal and how you knew them growing up. So I think this is actually a great seg. I'm going to take Sarah's question right now. So for people who are just listening, she wrote, I was really intrigued by the moment in the film when you let us in on your frustration with your friends and the lifestyle. Can you talk a little bit about how you understood and dealt with that as it was happening, and if you understood it differently once you got into post-production?
Yeah, it's a great question.
So I think this was
that is something that was constantly changing even throughout the day. Yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's with any friend. I think what has made me so keep in touch with these guys the longest, I think Sad Boy is my longest standing friend. I'm very bad at keeping in touch with friends long distance, but I think there is a part of our friendship that has a lot to do with just acceptance, no matter what. So anytime something would happen on set, or I would see something posted online that did make me frustrated, or did make me think they weren't taking themselves or me or this seriously, I would just, I just had to remind myself like who they were when I knew them. And that also changed in post-production, watching everything back and like seeing the difference between when they're acting and seeing how they're acting on social media at the same time. It is all really confusing. And I think the way I expressed it in the movie is as honest as I can be with it. I don't know. I just dealt with it. It's like, it's really like any friendship. You can't, you're never gonna, people are always going to impress you and disappoint you. And that's just like part of loving someone.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious, was there any difference between, because you not only worked with friends as collaborators, as the subjects, but you also had large, I guess, in terms of relative to how small it could get. But it's very much an independent production, and I know that. But you had a lot of people who contributed, is what I'm trying to say, without implying that like the budget was huge. But you had people who contributed in many ways, not just Corey being out there with you, but also Albert, who I noticed is here in this Q&A. We have a crew member who actually is listening to this right now, and in several other people who I understand are people that you've worked with over several films. What was it like working with them on this project? How is that related to memory, I guess, to touch on Jake's question a little bit?
Sure. Full disclosure, Albert's also upstairs. He's my boyfriend.
Okay, got it.
So he edits all of my stuff. He's an insanely talented editor, and his collaboration was the most important part of this movie. We went back and forth editing. I would get frustrated, hand it to him. He would do as much as he could do, and I would go back in. It was great. That's an amazing person to work with. He's edited 2 of my short films, 2.5 of my short films. Corey is my favorite cinematographer, and he's a really good friend. He's just really easy for me to work with. He shot my first short film that I ever made, so I wouldn't feel comfortable with anyone else going out there alone with anyone else. Chris Osborne helped me edit a lot of the music videos. I love his work with Via Anger's music videos, and so when I needed help cutting some of those videos, I asked for his help. My really good friend here in Baltimore, Meredith Moore, she's an incredible filmmaker and does really wonderful After Effects animations and special effects. She did all the special effects in the music video. And Memory, I met the guys at Memory, 2016 or something at Maryland Film Festival. I met him through Theo Anthony, who's also a Baltimore filmmaker, and I think I pitched them my idea for a short film, How I Need to Be Loved, and they helped me out with that one. And then I shared this idea with Riel, and he couldn't say no. He loves his SoundCloud rap. He loves his music documentaries. So it was great. I mean, I think so much of working this small means it's very, very important to choose to surround yourself with people who really understand the project and understand you as a filmmaker and your trajectory of filmmaking. And yeah, all these people, I've worked really hard over the past few years to find them and build really great collaborative relationships. So yeah, it's a great manifestation of all their work, and yeah, it's great.
Yeah. I will say also, Marnie's short, How I Need to Be Loved, is one of my favorite Craigslist documentaries ever, and it is available for free on her website. So do check it out after this. It's hilarious, is what I will say. But to touch a little bit more on the second half of Jake's question, would you say that the connections between everyone who does seem to show up not over and over again, but there's a through line, I think perhaps maybe because of the Baltimore connection more than anything else, is it formalized or like an informal connection that everybody happens to be working in an experimental way that is the type of film that memory supports?
I think we're just lucky to have found each other.
Yeah.
I mean, I was actually just talking about this today. It's like, I think like everything I've made has been with the help of people who do similar things. And I think finding that, oh my gosh, this sounds really cultish, finding that family is really important. And whether that's Baltimore or whether that's through memory, I think a lot of it started at Maryland Film Festival. And I think when you're making movies on this scale and in this age that we live in, it's easy to come across people that are interested in the same topics. Hang on, I'm going to scroll up and try to find Jake's comment just to make sure I'm answering. He doesn't have to hear about that. Oh, collective. Ooh, I don't know. I think they're more of a production company, and they just really like Baltimore filmmakers, and we just really like them. They work on a lot of projects. They're finishing up their own movie right now. So it's not a collective, but it's definitely just a really, really great collaborator. They're independent production. Yeah.
And from the exhibitors and programmers side, they are amazing too. So this is not paid for by them, by the way. This Q&A.
Also, they're just like willing to take risks on really crazy ideas and with new filmmakers, and they're just really great people and really believe in it and what filmmakers like me and Corey and Theo and Via try to do.
Yeah, and obviously they're a favorite of the DocYard, I think, because of the experimentation too. So actually, talking about experimentation, we're going to go to, Sarah had another question. I think this is a really great one that I'm also curious about. So she wrote, I'd also love to know more about the evolution in ideas regarding the music videos and the animated effects woven into the film. So yeah, were they present at the beginning? How, were you also directing that style? Did that come more from them?
Yeah, that's good. I have a lot of answers to this question. I always knew that we were going to incorporate music videos into this movie. I wanted this movie to feel like scrolling an Instagram feed or just like any endless social media feed, and that has like advertisements, that has pictures of people, kids that you don't know, and has music videos in it. So I wanted the scroll of the movie to feel endless, and part of that had to be music. And I love the work of Cole Bennett. He's a music video director, and he did like this really amazing Lil Vant music video and Ski Mask music video, like such great weird effects. Like he gets goofy and is not afraid to be like geeky with his effects, and really leans into the SoundCloud genre and bringing in video games and anime and stuff like that. So I was really inspired by his work and wanted to incorporate effects into the music video and the style of his SoundCloud rap music video. And then, even though I always wanted it to be woven in, I watched Bombay Beach, and the way she switched to music in her movie without making it a musical, I found really inspiring, and that helped along the edit too. So it all evolved. I always knew it was going to happen, but it evolved in the form that it is throughout the entire post-production.
Yeah. Did you find it difficult? Like, I mean, that's a terrible question. What were some of the challenges of, like, integrating that into your footage? Because it does strike me as being particular, like, just like Bombay Beach, actually. It is very, like, the scene's kind of, there's not a real signal that we're about to move into a music video until we're already halfway there. Because a lot of it starts out observational. So in planning for those scenes, what were some of the things that you were thinking about, if you could talk about that?
Yeah, I think I'm answering your question by saying this, but I was lucky enough to have Animal Collective score the movie, and they did another Baltimore connect. There's more Baltimore people. I'm friends with them and with Josh and with Deacon and Geologist. And I always wanted their role to be scoring the landscape. So any noise that was Crestone as a place was scored by Animal Collective, and anything that had to deal with the guys hanging out or listening to music on their phone, or the music video was purely their music. And I wanted those to weave in and out, like the landscape like weaved in and out of like images of like their cell phones, or them just like getting tattoos and laying around. So I didn't really have much of a plan for how to integrate. I just shot the music video, and I knew I wanted them to exist as standalone music videos that they can put out into the world on their own, and I wanted to incorporate it somehow into my movie. And I mean, Chris Osborne helped a lot with that, but just through editing and figuring out the part of the soundtrack that would make most sense to bring in rap music. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it's super well done, and I like watched the first time there is like the special effects come in. I know, yeah, I watched that a couple of times just to try to figure out like when does the film actually flip into music video mode, and it's, in my opinion, totally seamless. So I want to just bring up something that you said earlier about neither you or the guys in the film knowing exactly what it was that the film was going to be about while you were shooting, or before you got out there. And this, to me, seems to be another thing that's, I think, unusual, but actually that I want to pick apart a little bit in this film, because I think most of the films that are going out to a community are essentially about some sort of search for truth, trying to convey a quote-unquote accurate record, right, of whether it's the feeling of being there, if it's not like actual hard facts, like I'm not talking about capital T, true versus false, but about trying to convey, something that is, teaches us perhaps something about being human. But to me, this film is much slipperier than that, because honestly, when I first watched it, I wasn't even quite sure whether your voiceover was like, the capital T truth, which is why I was asking the questions about like whether that also was constructed or whether that came from production. So I'm really curious, like by the end of the shoot, like did you talk with the guys, with the subjects, about what you were doing? Like did you come to some sort of agreement, or was the whole thing more intuitive and you developed this sense together?
Yeah, so I didn't mean to say we didn't know what the movie was going to be about. We were all very much on the same page that they were the last people alive, and that's how I brought it to them. I was like, hey, I'm going to make a movie. I'm going to come out there, and we're going to make a movie, and you're going to be the last people alive on Earth. And they're like, great. And I want it to be about your friendship, and I want it to be about what you do every day. And they said, great. And that, you know, the truth, I think, was already in there a lot. It's like they do live this existence. They live every day. Like they could potentially be the last people alive. And you know, it's so interesting because their life does walk this line of truth, just like the movie does. Like so much of their life does exist as these characters that they've decided for themselves online, and they decided those characters for themselves in the movie as well. But the capital T truth is like this friendship is real, this group is real, and the art that they're making is real. And whatever means it takes to get them there, like that may or may not be true. But I'm not sure if it necessarily matters for what the biggest truth is. Yeah, it's tough to. I mean, they knew it was a documentary, but they also knew that they were allowed to do whatever they wanted, and whether they were lying to the camera, that would be fine too, because I was going to be doing the same thing. Kind of whatever it took for us to tell a story that was really honest about that moment in time and about our friendship and about those 8 days. Whatever it took, whether it was lying or telling the truth.
Yeah. Okay, so I do have one last question, but we're coming up to the end of our 45 minutes. So if anyone in Zoom or on YouTube silently watching has any burning questions, this is not your last chance, because we all have social media these days, but your last chance to ask it and get it recorded. Yeah, so I heard about an update about Ben's and what Sloppy and them are doing. Yeah, so I was just wondering if you felt comfortable, because there's now an in memoriam card for Ben's at the end of this film.
Yeah, it's still pretty hard to talk about, but Ben's passed away last Thursday, suddenly. It's a really, really sad thing. And everyone's doing okay. A bunch of the guys that weren't in CRESTONE went back out there, and they run this really amazing Airbnb and are there just spending time together in memory of Ben. Yeah, it's sad. He never got to see the movie, but I think we all preserved him really honestly in this film. He's the one who was giving you the tour of the dome house and was flying the drone. And yeah, I think the movie portrayed him exactly as who he was. He's like very kind and spiritual and open and generous. So I'm happy we had that time with him.
Yeah, I was thinking about that rewatching the film yesterday, about how he is the tour guide of the film, and he's the one that takes us above and get to see the broad landscape. Not that.
Yeah, I always describe him as the eye in the sky, which is like, it's really nice to think about now.
Yeah. Okay, so we have maybe on a lighter note, which is better. Thank you, Eric, for asking this to end this Q&A on. What line in the film have you and Albert found yourselves quoting the most during quarantine? Have you been quoting lines?
We say there's beams in the wall a lot. I don't know if you remember that part. It's like in the cave, there's like a little hole, and Sabi goes, "There's beams in the wall." I think we say that often. There's a lot we say. It's like become. I'm not even conscious of it anymore.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Did you keep in touch with Cody, the guy on the bike?
No.
Do you have any idea if he ended up in California?
So, I have no idea where he is. I know he didn't make it to California, and I know he's somewhere in CRESTONE.
Oh, so he didn't make it very far. But maybe he found what he was looking for anyway. Um, Albert says, once the slingshot breaks, we're fucked.
Yeah, we say that a lot these days.
Well, I mean,
Are you
so
on a phone?
this is kind of a cheap shot question, but with the little time that we have left, other than well, I think there's a lot of filmmakers in here, so I'm curious. Two things: what are you working on now? Because usually once films get to the DocYard, they're sort of wrapping up their festival tour. But we're in a really unique situation with this because in case you're in this Q&A or listening later on, so CRESTONE premiered at True False to full houses, but then it was supposed to go to South by Southwest. That's the very next festival, and of course South by was very famously one of the first festivals to cancel, and this happened in the middle of True False. So CRESTONE as a film was at the very edge of premiering and then getting festival appearances canceled. So even if what you're working on next is thinking about CRESTONE, like I'm super curious to hear like how you're handling all of this.
I just keep telling myself it could be worse. I think this movie does perform very well online. I think people are enjoying watching it alone in their rooms, and I can see that too. So whether it's in a theater or whether it's on a laptop in someone's bed, I think I'm very happy that it's getting watched at all. I'm working on a new feature film. I was hoping to shoot it this summer, but it looks like it's not going to happen, or start shooting this summer. Looks like it's not going to happen, but it's about transhumanism, mind uploading in the Chesapeake Bay. So it'll be wild. It's another like doc.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're always 2 steps ahead of us, it seems, in the subjects of your films. So perhaps this is where we are immediately going to in the near future.
Get ready for my films, you guys. It'll be great.
Oh, yeah. Okay, actually, we have one. This is a great final question because I don't know the answer to this either. And is there a way that people can keep watching CRESTONE going forward?
Memory and I are planning a few more online screenings and then hopefully find a permanent home for it. But keep your eyes out for more online screenings until we do know where it'll live eventually.
Yeah. I will say I think Memory has been the most creative when it comes to finding online homes for all of its previous projects. If you don't know about this, but just Google Shakedown Pornhub Criterion channel, and you will find the craziest press release from Variety, in my opinion, about a film's online release in the last 2 months. So yeah, I have no doubt that there will eventually be a home for CRESTONE. And
I really wanted to do something with High Times, or we like do something with SoundCloud too. So maybe we'll do something fun like that. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think the world is I mean, I feel like no one can shoot anything right now, especially with these larger commercial crews where everybody's being flown in for a shoot from elsewhere. Yeah, I don't know. Don't listen to me. That was not pure speculation on my part.
Mandy, if you want to follow up, you should follow them on Instagram because their Instagram stories are incredible and it'll let you know anything you need to know about them. It's just find me and then you'll be able to find everyone.
Yeah. Okay. And then I think when we post this Q&A online, we'll link to their Insta handles in the comments part. Yeah, so everybody can find it easily. Yeah. So thank you, Marnie. Well, I'm actually really curious about this. If you could turn on your video and give the thumbs up or thumbs down, or feel free to use the chat. But did people have fun watching this film in quarantine, or is it more of a scary experience watching this film in quarantine? I'm really curious. I see thumbs up from people.
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up. Okay.
You can put your thumb down, it's fine.
Actually, Zoom does not allow you to do a thumbs down through the interface. People have to like physically do the thumbs down. It only allows you to clap or to do a thumbs up. You can only... Yeah.
Well, thanks for watching, everyone.
Yeah, and we'll keep the this room open a little bit longer if you want to chat with any of us from the DocYard team or anything like that. But yeah, thank you. It's, I don't know, you won't be able to hear it, but thank you, Marnie. We super appreciate this.
Thank you so much, Ab. This is really fun. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Do you have any plans later tonight?
Probably play Zelda. I'm deep in Zelda Breath of the Wild, man. Nintendo Switch has saved my life.
Oh my god. I have no plans, but I'm gonna catch up on The Voice. What happened on The Voice? One of my friends told me.
Bye.
Yeah. See ya.
Bye, everyone.
Okay, and we'll see if I can now stop the stream.